Welcome everyone to our webinar on efficient campus buildings. I'm very excited to welcome Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities Services, Howard Wertheimer, Chief Sustainability Officer, Mike Piehler, along with Ackerman Center for Excellence in Sustainability, Executive Director, Jeff Mittelstadt, and Associate Director, Tracy Triggs-Matthews. If you are a student on this webinar and you are wanting CLE credit, I will provide that link at the end of the webinar. And once the webinar has ended, you should be able to get that credit through the link. And so I will go ahead and have everyone introduce themselves and give a quick description of what you do here on campus. And we can start with you, Mike.
Thanks, Abigail. My name is Mike Piehler. I'm the university's Chief Sustainability Officer, and I'm also the director of a research institute called the Institute for the Environment. More importantly, I am very involved with Sustainable Carolina, which is the university's sustainability initiative. And we are the ones who help set the goals and organize progress to all of our aspirational sustainability goals around water, waste, and greenhouse gas emissions in particular. And one of the big parts of all of that is the renovation of, the construction of new, and the use of buildings. So we're excited to talk today.
Great. And Howard?
Good morning. I'm Howard Wertheimer. I'm the Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm an architect. I spent a lot of my career in private practice and about 15 years at Georgia Tech, leading the development of a very sustainable campus. And I'm hoping to build on the foundation that Mike and others have built here at UNC to move the needle to make us one of the most sustainable campuses in the country.
Fantastic. And we'll have Jeff next.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Mittelstadt. I'm the Executive Director of the Ackerman Center for Excellence in Sustainability. I'm also a professor of the practice in strategy and entrepreneurship. And our goals are incorporating social and environmental sustainability into every aspect of business and investment as we create new programming and add to existing programming throughout the business school and throughout campus. So it's good to be here.
Great. And last but not least, Tracy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. And glad to see that there's a lot of students and other folks here today. Tracy Triggs-Matthews, Associate Director for the Ackerman Center for Excellence in Sustainability. I've been at UNC for 18 years, all of that with the center. And I support the work of the business school, of students, of our faculty director, Olga Hahn, of the amazing things that Jeff Mittelstadt does. I'm here to help connect and support our students in their pursuits of sustainability every day, all day.
Great. And we're so excited to hear about the new Bell Hall from Jeff and Tracy a little bit later on. But first, we're going to get started just going through some of what building and renovating looks like on UNC's campus. So Carolina is the oldest public university in the United States. Very proud of that. First chartered in 1789. On our South Campus, there's the newer buildings. And on Campus North, closer to Franklin Street, is where we have our more historic buildings. And now we have a third region that's come into play, Carolina North, which is a 230-acre space. And that has received a lot of press in the past week as the chancellor announced that we would break ground and begin construction there in 2027. And so my first question is for Howard and Mike. What challenges does Carolina face as a historic and fast-growing campus in the construction of new buildings? Put another way, how do you go about constructing new buildings that fit in with the university's overall aesthetic, but are still sustainable and modern?
Mike, you want to go first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Okay. So I think one of the challenges with the historic nature of campus is just that everything was built to incredible standards. We tend to have our walls are very, very thick and made of granite. And so when you do things like additional renovations, for example, if you wanted to put in EV chargers on campus, the cost of installing the charger far exceeds the cost of the charger itself because we are such a substantial and really such an old place. So that's a wonderful thing. There are challenges. A lot of the accesses to buildings are fairly narrow. So when you think about getting service vehicles into the bays of some of the buildings on South Campus, it's just not possible. But it does create a beautiful aesthetic, as we all know, and we strive to match what we have, particularly on North Campus, and do it in a more sustainable way. So that just involves trying to think about building envelope in a non-modern building. And this is where we defer to our experts on the facility side and where we rely on them to bring in folks in the architectural realm who are really skilled in this area and able to try to find ways to make things like our old dorms modern and really efficient. The specifics of that, I'm going to hand off to my colleague Howard.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So you know, having I've been here since July, and to see buildings that are 200 years old says a lot about sustainability to me. It would be very easy to tear down buildings, but as many people know, the most sustainable building is the one that you do not build. So investing capital in renovating these buildings, doing modest additions if that's what's necessary to meet the programmatic needs. But we also need to build new buildings from time to time. And Bell Hall is an excellent example of, planning, designing, constructing, owning, and operating a sustainably, efficient building. With older buildings, we want to be smart about the building envelopes, reduce our energy consumption as we replace engineered systems and building envelopes. We want to be smart about that. And then new construction, we have a vocabulary on campus that is brick and stone and glass, and the new buildings sort of respond to that campus aesthetic. The detailing might be a little bit different, but it all blends in and it all links with the ground plane, which is critically important. And how do we deal with stormwater management and our tree canopy? And what is that experiential process that people have and the memories that are created between buildings? So I'll pause there and turn it back over.
Great. And we mentioned the Chancellor's announcement recently. And so two of his focus areas are enrollment planning and the university's physical master plan, which directly inform the current state of construction and renovation on campus. When we think about welcoming more students to campus, we often think about residence halls, which Mike has mentioned. But I also know, Mike, that you have been working on and involved in the planning of this new student recreation space. Can you tell me about how we're optimizing these built areas to create more space for students?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point where you look at the priority of having the university grow, at least to some extent, to match the growth of our state. And the chancellor stated that he wants to give at least a proportional number of students the opportunity to enjoy the amazing benefits of coming to Carolina. And that's a great goal. And it does obviously involve more classrooms, more dorms, but then it also involves all of the additional things that students need to have when they're on campus. And one of those is wellness writ large, which includes different kinds of athletic facilities, recreational facilities, and there is an early plan in place to really upgrade and increase the size of students' access to those services. And it's been early stages so far, but really remarkable conversations going on about connecting the built environment to the natural environment. Because while Carolina is fairly densely developed in the areas where it is developed, we still have remarkable pieces of the natural environment present and big opportunities to potentially reconnect. I think many people know we have a pretty amazing stream network that runs underground in the university, and we've done some really exciting things with bringing some of those streams back up to the surface and making them amenities. Battle Grove is a great site if people haven't been there, which also happens to be right by one of the new dorms that's going in by Cobb. So there have been great, thoughtful conversations about how wellness involves sustainability in all aspects, in having a healthy building, in having an efficient building, and in having connections to nature. And I think that those thoughts early on are going to be a big benefit for the dorms, for the recreational facilities, and really excitingly now that we have this pretty much blank palette at Carolina North, the opportunity to incorporate all of those ideas.
Great. And Howard, your attitude toward constructing buildings on college campuses has been described as, fiscally strategic, which I think, you just mentioned that, the best, most sustainable building is one that you don't tear down. Can you talk about your philosophy when you think about the cost of renovating buildings and how you fit sustainability into those costs?
Sure. So for me, every building, whether it's a renovation or new construction, I want the entire team to set out for it to be the most sustainable building we've ever done. So set the bar high and then figure out what might be negotiable. We recently completed Bingham Hall, which is in the core of campus, a historic building, and redid all the engineered systems, the building envelope, modernized it, made it more efficient. We have more occupancy per square foot of people. So when things like that, just space management and utilization and optimization is very sustainable because it requires fewer resources to build new buildings. For Carolina North, we've set up some guiding principles that this is an incredibly unique opportunity for UNC. That we have this, area of that campus, 200 to 250 acres of 950 acres that we can develop, that I want to set the goal for it to be the most sustainable campus in the United States. So everything that we do and our partners do need to have aspirational goals and stretch goals that allows us to accomplish that, while also preserving the forest that is there and the nature trails that Mike was alluding to that we have adjacent to campus.
Definitely. And are there specific buildings at other colleges and universities that you've worked on in the past that are helping inform, some of these decisions that you're making here at UNC?
Absolutely. So, I spent a fair amount of time at Georgia Tech, leading sustainable campus development there for many years. And we were fortunate that we had a donor, the Candida Fund, who wanted to do a living building in the Southeast. And they were talking to potential partners. They came and spoke with us. Being a habitual builder who had been on this journey of sustainable campus development, they thought we were the right fit. So the living building challenge, has to be net positive water, net positive energy. We have material reuse. We have about 20 examples of materials that would have otherwise gone into a landfill that we were able to harvest and use in that building. We used 2x4s from movie sets from the film industry in Georgia to help build some of the structure of the building. We used slate tile of a building on campus that had to be redone, and we took that tile and it is the wet wall in the restrooms. So, I think we have lots of opportunities, while maybe not pursuing, certification of living building challenge, but there are ideas and ideals that we can embrace. The AIA Framework for Design Excellence is not a certification program, but it's a framework with 10 subject areas. And if you accomplish all of those frameworks, you will have a sustainably designed building that's cost effective to own and operate for many, many years. And at universities, because we build for the long term, that will own and operate these buildings. So the cost of ownership needs to be factored in, because I'm pretty sure the cost of water, cost of electricity, cost of gas is not going to go down So in the example of the Living Building Challenge, in essence, we paid our electric bill and we paid our water bill up front because it has a large solar PV array. We have a 50,000 gallon cistern that captures rainwater for irrigation. We have compost toilets, which use about a tablespoon of water per flush. So these strategies, we'll see what UNC's appetite is for incorporating some of those strategies on some of the projects that we build here at Carolina.
Yeah, and I first heard about the Candida building when I was at the Appalachian State Energy Conference a few summers ago. And I remember seeing pictures of it for the first time, and it was like very breathtaking. So definitely recommend our audience go take a Google search of those after the webinar because it's a very, very neat building.
Yeah, and I will point out one other thing with that. The donor, what the gift that they gave to Georgia Tech, yes, it was part of the building, but they really wanted to create a culture in the Southeast that is replicable. And we would have thousands of people come visit before we even started construction. I had a colleague at Vanderbilt that he gathered a group of folks from Nashville and set up a group called Making Nashville Living Building Ready. They came to Atlanta a few times. We went to Nashville, did some presentations. So, part of it was creating this ripple effect that can inspire students, faculty, visitors to say, I want to incorporate sustainability in the built environment where I live, work, learn, and play.
Yes, definitely. Great. All right, so that leads us to our presentation on Bell Hall. So I will give a quick introduction to the business school and kind of the timeline of everything. But we've had a business school here since 1919, but it wasn't until 1991, thanks to a gift from Frank Kenan's family, that Kenan-Flagler Business School got its own building. And then in 1997, the McCall building opened on what we know as the business school campus today. And of course, in 2023, we celebrated the groundbreaking for Bell Hall, and that building was completed this past fall semester. And so we have Tracy and Jeff here with us to talk about this one-of-a-kind sustainable building. It was so exciting to hear from Tracy at the end of last semester that they'd be moving into the building, their new office spaces right before the holiday break. So I will let you both take it from here. And I believe Jeff has the slides for this.
Yeah, so the our move-in date was December 15, but that didn't happen. So we actually just moved in a few weeks ago. As happens with a lot of construction projects, things get delayed. Other things have to happen. Tables have to be built and put into place. So there's the goals and then the reality of the project. But we are in that space and it's amazing. It's definitely been really fun to see how the idea and the discussions and all the pieces have come together into this real building. It's been fun. So I wanted to talk about how this started, and it was, boy, more than 10 years ago. A lot of discussions about admissions, growing pressure to have top students. And the business school is actually having to really limit the numbers. There's oh, sorry. I saw something pop up. So really a lot of challenges with trying to bring in all these amazing students. And so the discussion about increasing the space started, and that turned into creating a new building attached to McCall. With that, there were a lot of focus groups. We got input from faculty, from staff, from other folks on campus, and definitely from students. And from that, a lot of those pieces are in place. And as part of that, we wanted to have sustainability be a piece of it. From that focus group data, we were able to see that the majority of people really wanted to have this building be sustainable and to have it be a working example of how sustainability and business come together. So our goals for this were to hit the 3 zeros, and we are the first university project that has targeted the 3 zeros of zero waste, zero water, and zero carbon. So those were the goals and the targets. We are pursuing LEED Platinum. That has not been certified yet. There's still some banging and things happening in the building right now. So we're not at the point where they'll come in and finish permitting and doing the certification process. And then the third one is Fitwell, which if you haven't taken a look, I would suggest you go and Google that and see what the Fitwell certification is. It has two pieces to it. There's for people and for value. So the for people part is considering how a building is addressing and being healthy for people. So the lighting is good for you, your environment, being able to go outside and just be into the environment. A lot of different aspects of having a building be good for your health. Jeff, did you have anything else to add?
I'll just add that the human health piece is really important, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about some of the particulars as well. But I mean, our job as educators and a university is to help develop the leaders of today and tomorrow, but also help each and every student find and their passions, continue to define those passions as they move forward and create their own futures and careers based on those. And so the idea was, how do we think about that with how we create the building as well? And so, and just to add a couple of things, there's still work going on, but it was, we made the decision a long time ago to increase the undergraduate business program by 50%, which is a large increase, and that was happening now. So we had to open the building. So the Ackerman Center gladly was a month later because we need to make sure all the classrooms were ready for all of those students as well. So, but I will go on to the next one for you, Tracy.
Yeah. So, and included in that is, being the highest performing business school and sending a message that sustainability is good for business. One of my mottos for this year is we continue our work. Have had people ask me over time, oh, is sustainability kind of falling off? Is it this or that? And it's no, we're continuing. Everybody's moving forward. And this is a great example of how sustainability can come together and make the world a better place for everybody. So we have a lot of aspects to this building that you can see here. There's skylights, so there's a lot of natural light that comes directly into the main part of the building, and the outside part of the building is designed to enhance energy, so it's designed to help heat when it's needed and to help cool when it's needed. There's additional parking that was put in underneath. There's more EV stations that are being added into the parking deck. I think the goal is to have 12, and right now we have 9 that are online. There's reclaimed water there's a dual plumbing system. So there's water that's coming in for all of the toilets, and there's high efficiency faucets and features. One of the things early on that we had discussed that was really exciting to me, it was a very innovative, a simple idea, but very innovative to take the steam from the dishwashing part of the cafe and where food is being prepared. That steam is put back into the system to help preheat water that's needed for heating. So there's a lot of really cool, innovative aspects to the building. Anything else you wanted to add, Jeff?
Yeah,
There's so many things. It's hard to like list them all.
Just a few highlights. So there are 12 new electric vehicle charging spaces. I want to highlight that since Mike had talked about the EV charging spaces throughout campus. And I'll get to some of the daylighting in the next slide, but then seeing it from here, I want to talk about, so we're planting more trees than we're taking down, but the planting of trees is not just, I mean, it's important to make sure from a tree cover and biodiversity standpoint, but also in terms of it's the way the trees are being planted will also help with shading over time. And then also the importance of that for clean air. So I'll talk about this on the internal part soon, but we want our students and our faculty and staff to be able to be outside, enjoy the outside, and have clean air, because the cleaner our air, the more productive we are, the happier we are, the better wellness we have, and so which also fits in with it well too. So and then we'll get into my other comments on the next slides. So I'll take us on.
Yeah, so this is kind of a cross section. So you can see the forest is on the far side. The materials that have been used for the building are all designated healthy. So there's not the volatile outgassing. All of the furniture that's been purchased fits into that category, and trying to really make sure that the space, the air is clean and healthy. There's a system that really, when there's more people in a system, they'll increase the airflow so that there's more air coming in, which I think is just a really neat feature to be able to measure all of these different levels and to address and adjust to them.
So in here, I'll talk about a couple more things. Is that so we use smart surfaces for their cooling effects and to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and also reduce the amount of water that we need. These include a cool roof and green roof, as well as the solar panels that we put on that are already on the roof, and will also be on the old McCall building as well. The bioretention we saw earlier. When we built actually, I'm going to talk about that one later. Sorry. I get excited and go ahead. Some of the things around construction too, so the construction waste was recycled and diverted from landfills. One of the things that's important to me, and this is from one of my previous lives in the private sector, was the importance of clean air inside. Right. So I talked about productivity outside, but to maximize productivity so our students and faculty and staff can get the most out of their jobs, but also in terms of wellness and happiness is really important. So those healthy materials that don't off-gas volatile organic compounds were really important, as well as the way that everything kind of integrates together to make sure that our air is as clean as possible. So we'll move on here.
This is a nice diagram that showcases how the building is using the sun to add value. So you see the really steep red line, that's summer. That's the highest point, like where the summer sun is coming down, and designing the shading to come out so that it doesn't hit the building. But then you'll notice the lower angled red line, that's winter, it does hit the building. So in the winter, the sun is helping to heat the building. In the summer, it's designed to keep the sun from heating the building. And that helps with a lot of different aspects of heating and cooling a building. In the McCall building, there's all the brick around the outside, and it definitely has an impact in the summer and the winter with the sun hitting the brick and keeping it warm, mostly in the summer where it requires more energy to cool on the inside of the building.
And so, and the lighting here is important too. So, you know, we've used LED lighting fixtures throughout the building, but we were able to use a lot fewer LED lighting fixtures because of the use of natural light for perimeter of concentration of workspaces around the perimeter of the building. But then also when we think about the light coming in through the atrium as well, actually helps light up the entire atrium and all the walking spaces in the middle of the building. So that's an important concept or aspect as well.
This one I'm excited about. Mike had mentioned before about streams being underground, and there was one that went underneath the business school that's now been brought up, and it's being made into this water feature. So the storm runoff now will be held in a retention pond and has a recirculating feature to it. And it creates just an amazing outside feature. I don't know about all the rest of you, but when I'm near a river or a creek, it just calms me down just to hear the water flowing. So that will be something that will be a really beautiful and nice feature for the outside space. And the outside space is easily accessible from walkways as well as just coming out of the building from different egress and ingress sites.
Including some of the larger spaces that are used for events and for speakers and things like that, where there's an outdoor play part right next to it, and it's looking beautiful. I'll say that. So the stormwater is drained into the integral landscape here with the water features, and it also is part of the recirculating water system, so that we can utilize that with our, for example, the dual plumbing pipe supply system for the non-potable water for the toilets, as well as the urinals, and then our low flow plumbing fixtures throughout the building as well. And so it's a great retention feature.
Yeah, so the projection is that this building has an expected and carbon of about 16 years worth of energy related to the carbon emissions. So thinking about from the beginning of the process of creating this building, the extraction, manufacturing, transportation, maintenance, and end of life of all of these building materials. So that's a lot to offset. And we've been working on all these other pieces to help with that offset, including putting in the PV and all the other features of the building to reduce its energy use. So we're not contributing even more to the carbon addition that comes with building something new.
I think a cool thing used here too is we used carbon sequestered concrete, which captures carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and that actually injects it into the technology used, injects it into the concrete during the mixing and curing process. So there was also carbon dioxide sequestered into the concrete that is now part of the building. And I thought that was a pretty cool piece that I know back in the day when I was working on green building, we couldn't afford to do, but but now we can. So I think that's another aspect that's pretty cool that maybe you won't see, right? Or think about when you're walking up to the building.
So right now there are photovoltaic solar panels on the top of the new building in place, and we will be putting some on the McCall building as there are renovations happening internally in that building. And this, you can see I don't know if you can see that well, but there's estimates of the area and the solar estimate coverage and what we need still to offset fully or more closely to 100. And there are plans to have more photovoltaic. So this is an overhead view of the business school, and the big blue is the new building. The white rectangle next to it is the top of the parking deck that's next to it. And then the kind of weird shaped building is McCall. To the right of the white rectangle parking deck is the S11 lot that is a very large and open space. And that is the area that we are targeting to add covered photovoltaic, but we're still needing to fundraise. So if anybody has $2.5 million and would like to help us complete that, we are here for you.
Yeah, and I'll say, so we are using some offsets in the short term with the goal of not having to use offsets in an ongoing fashion when we're able to add the photovoltaic cells. Hopefully, here's the example
there's
of
this
the parking lot.
Yeah, the schematic. I think those will also be premium parking spots for folks because in the summer that whole space is pretty hot. For those of you who are walking from the school down to the bus station there or the bus stop or walking across campus, I think that'll be a nice feature to have those covered and having some shade as well as it producing electricity for the building.
Right. And the green part is our center, the Ackerman Center. So if you ever want to come by and say hi, that's where we are now. And that's it.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation, Tracy and Jeff.
Yeah.
And I see we're getting some questions in the Q&A, and we won't have time to answer questions during this webinar, but if you have a question, definitely feel free to put it in the Q&A, and we will get back to you after the webinar. We'll send an email to everyone who attended with the answers to those questions. All right, so we'll jump back into some of our questions. So we just heard Tracy and Jeff talk about Bell Hall and how they aimed to meet LEED Gold standards before it was even constructed. And with, platinum obviously being the ultimate goal, what is the importance, and this is for Howard and Mike, of colleges and universities setting out a sustainability target before new buildings are, even built?
So I'll dive in first. So to me, I think there are over 700 college and university presidents and chancellors that signed the American College and University President's Climate Commitment back in 2006 and 7 and 8. And basically that put a line in the sand saying we are going to commit ourselves to be carbon neutral at some point in the future. Universities that have research portfolios, engineering schools, medical schools with lots of fume hoods, they won't be able to get there based on today's technologies. But as technologies change, hopefully they'll be able to get close to being net zero. That being said, by signing that commitment, universities have put a line in the sand and they'll be in a much better circumstance than if they did nothing at all and if they just kept doing whatever they were doing. So part of that is, whether it's LEED certified buildings or LEED certifiable, using the checklist as a guide. LEED's been around for over 20 years and it's been transformative in the design and construction industry. But, setting up goals, I like to do sustainability charrettes at the beginning of every project. Universities have goals, but getting the design team, construction team, user representatives, students involved, saying what's important, and then how do we prioritize that list to implement these strategies in a building. One of them for me personally is to not use potable water for non-potable use. So Jeff and Tracy talked about harvesting water to flush the toilets. Makes abundant sense. The cost of water is not going to go down in the future, more likely than not. But by not using potable water in those circumstances or for cooling towers, that allows universities and towns and cities to do other development where they have a need for potable water. So thinking holistically beyond our, the edges of our campus, and how do we protect the rivers and the lakes and the streams that we all benefit from. But I think having that sustainability charrette is important because new technologies evolve every day. And then how do you budget for some of these? We just heard about the PVs for the parking lot. How does that get incorporated and become a higher priority? So it's not something that is not included, and that's a situation where it's an easy enough thing to integrate at a future date, as opposed to having to fully integrate, a second set of pipes to be able to flush toilets in a building. So you just need to think and act holistically and integrate architecture, landscape, engineering, technology, ecology, and fiscal stewardship into the decision making when planning and designing and constructing, owning, and operating a building. And sometimes people occupy a building, and so Jeff and Tracy will have to be sheriffs in the building to make sure people are modeling the right behavior to make sure the building stays sustainably operational.
So I think Howard just about said it all, particularly that last phrase, just summing it all up, that these standards are what drive us to broad accomplishments, to build the best buildings and occupy them the best and make the most progress towards the goals we've committed to. I do think it's worth saying, because we've had examples of it several times, that occasionally these standards, the accreditation itself, is the motivation sometimes for people like donors. Sounds like the Candida building was going to be a Meet the Living Building challenge. So if that's what you have to do to get the funding that's required to get across the finish line, then I do think the standards themselves start to have value. And then also, I think it makes you feel good. Everybody loves a medal. But to Howard's point, I think a certifiable building or the AIA standards that he spoke of earlier are all going to be built to the sustainability standards that we expect and we require to maintain our progress, our stated progress, in all the metrics and the goals that we have laid out in our climate action plan and our water plan, which, we've made great progress in reducing our emissions, even though the campus is growing like crazy, and that's wonderful. And several people have mentioned not using offsets right away. I think that's great. The way that most of these standards are written, it's to make actual headway rather than offsetting, which we've seen can be really substantive, but also can be potentially problematic if it's not done in a substantial way. So it's all exciting. It's all full circle. Those of you who don't know, the university used to be both the water authority and the electrical supplier to the entire town. So this is not something, these were utilities for a very long time until they were transitioned to be freestanding utilities. So things like water reuse on campus really underpins water reuse for OWASA, which is a wildly successful program. So continuing to keep those things as a vital part of our local utility is in our interests from a sustainability aspect, but as Howard pointed out, water is not getting cheaper. So it's also in our best interest going forward financially.
Yes.
On something quickly that Howard said, because we can build the best buildings ever, but we need the behavior to change in those buildings as well, and to keep that change. And so, and sustainability strategy, one of the risks that we look at in terms of the risk of us not meeting the goals we set out to meet was called participation risk. And so, as we are, all of us start to inhabit these buildings, it's, we're going for zero waste, which means composting everything that's compostable in the building. Are we making sure that we're influencing everyone around us and being leaders in that way to make sure that the behavior matches the goals as well?
That's a great point. And Howard, are there innovations that, you're really thinking about when it comes to improving things like energy and water efficiency in some of this new construction on campus?
Absolutely. I think, the manufacturing industry is changing and they're keeping up with the demands of owners like us at UNC and other college and university campuses around the country. So they are changing formulas in their product. In waterproofing, for example, they will no longer include a chemical that might be carcinogenic, and they can substitute it with another chemical that still allows that product to perform as well or better. So as long as uh, you know, there's pressure on the marketplace, things will change. There are furniture manufacturers that have to, just like you go to the grocery store and you see a label on a product, and if you're diabetic and the first ingredient is sugar, you probably will not buy that. So now there's a declare label that for certain manufacturers have bought into this. So as an owner, you can decide to buy that desk or that chair or that carpeting because you can see what the chemical makeup is of that product. And then as an informed consumer, you choose to buy it or not. And so that transparency of the manufacturing industry is critically important.
Yes. And in terms of residence halls on campus, which I know, has been a big topic of conversation on campus with our growing enrollment, is there anything you're especially excited to see those spaces incorporate? I know we've mentioned non-potable water and things that use less chemicals and that sort of thing, but is there anything else?
Yeah, I think, we have a 10-year housing master plan to respond to the growing enrollment at UNC. And, we have a project Mike and I are involved with right now where, we're implementing certain sustainability strategies. Some of them may have come on a little bit later in the conversation, but we're able to incorporate those. But now the next one and the one after that, we will keep raising the bar and, requiring certain strategies to be implemented. If it's whether it's the material locally sourced, reducing transportation mileage and trucking expenses. I don't want to go buy granite and marble overseas or lumber, mass timber. I would love to see UNC incorporate mass timber. I look at the campus of North Carolina. We do a tree recycling on campus, which is great for modest things, donor recognition plaques, furniture, things of that nature. But why not construct some of our buildings using our fallen trees as the lumber that adds beauty and tells a bit of history about the sense of place.
Yes, and shout out to Carolina Tree Heritage, which is that recycling program on campus doing pretty cool stuff. And so going off of that, I think moving into talking about the student experience a little bit more. Tracy and Jeff, you mentioned how Bell Hall is, just totally improving that experience, especially with increased enrollment in the undergraduate program. How have you seen students, or, if you have yet, engage with these sustainable aspects of Bell Hall? I know you just moved in there a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I'd say like right off the bat, walking into the building, there were a lot of students on the couches. The way that things can be moved around, and so seeing like some pieces moved over so that more people could gather together. Seeing the little conference rooms full of students. When I walk by, they're in there working on projects together with, big screen. And yeah, just I've had a lot of students come by and just want to come in and see, and they're all, I think, most amazed when they come through and then you get out into this open spot and the windows are there and you can see out into the woods. And I've had at least one intern come and do work in the space and just was like very grateful to have the quiet and the view. And yeah, there's been a lot of comments about like just the oh wow as they've moved through the building. I think too, I wanted to mention this will be a great going forward, being able to collect data and being able to have students use that and think about what are the next innovations? What are some of the things that, could happen? Because, a building, it's done. There are little things you can do to it, but it's there. But it gives students an opportunity to look and explore and then think about, oh, wow, what if? And, that's like that next step on the innovation journey and thinking about what could be improved upon or even more sustainable.
Yeah, the activity is amazing. I mean, the number of students, sheer number of students who are working, reading, and everything in the open areas it's energizing. We'll just say that. We also have a screen that has live data on energy usage, water, et cetera. And I haven't I actually haven't gone down on that level since we've been. So well, you hear students saying, how many of your classes are in the new building, right? Well, all of the ones I teach are still in the old building, so I don't get to go in quite as much in my office. But there's even that energy around everybody trying to figure out how many classes am I going to have this semester in the new building versus the old building and things like that. But definitely the activity that's going around in all of the seating areas, all of the open areas, all of the naturally lit areas is immense at this point already.
Yeah, and you both mentioned data, and I was just thinking when you mentioned green space during your presentation, a lot of groups here on campus are interested in heat mapping. So I was thinking that could be some cool data to get done on your side of campus too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then similarly, Howard, we've talked about the Candida building, but I was wondering if you could quickly share, how you saw students interacting with the distinct elements of that building when it opened.
Yeah, I think part of the goal is using the campus as a living learning laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And every project at North Carolina to me, so we're 700 acres. That's how big every project site is. When I was at Georgia Tech, every project site was 400 acres because you have the interconnectivity of utility distribution systems, pedestrian pathways, stormwater runoff, vehicular pathways, transit, tree canopy. And so you start big and then you whittle it down to that particular building site. So I think it's really important to think holistically in a very integrated manner. And then I think the Bell Building is a wonderful example for students who might normally be on that part of campus to engage in that part of campus. So at the Candida Building, it would have been very easy had we turned it over to the College of Engineering or the College of Design and say here. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted every student to have an experience in that building. So we made it basically a general purpose building, and we worked very closely with the provost's office and the registrar's office to have only centrally scheduled or general purpose classrooms. So if you're taking a math class or English, it might be in the Candida building. So the goal is that every student would be able to have a class in that building. Plus, there was a maker space and auditorium and lectures. So it was really a 24/7 building. And hopefully Bell Hall will open its arms and welcome students across campus so they can see sustainability in practice. And then they go out, when they graduate, and they can go make the world a better place.
And I hope they welcome staff and faculty down to come see it too, because I am very excited to see the new building.
Yeah. And
You are
again,
welcome to come. We'll set up a time, have you guys over.
That sounds fantastic.
yeah, and I think the same will hold true for Carolina North. And I see someone posed a question there. There is a frequently asked questions FAQ. If you sort of Google FAQ Carolina North about the trails, so the trails are not going anywhere. So hopefully they'll be enhanced, and but it's really important, being out in nature. And there's an infrastructure there. Is it the Pumpkin Trail or something? So I haven't been on it, but I'm learning. So, we've heard those comments, but there are certain things that are untouchable, and that forest out there is untouchable.
Which is a remarkable commitment to have 900 some acres, have 700 left as forest and trails is a remarkable commitment by the university, and one that's totally worthwhile, as we all know.
Yes. Yes. And Mike, we'll have you wrap it up. I just wanted to quickly ask you how you've seen the university engage students in building design specifically, because, I know we're designing for students and we definitely want them to have some sort of say in, what they're getting.
Absolutely. I think most of my direct contact is through Sustainable Carolina, where we have really acute interest across campus in all of the aspects of building design, of building operation. We focus a lot on the target areas around greenhouse gas emission, water, and waste. And we have not only interest, but amazing student expertise, thinking about organizations like RESPC, the Renewable Energy Special Projects Committee. I learn from them about ways they engage with the university so that we can improve our outreach. So I do think the interest is acute and that students have been involved in the planning processes that I've been a part of, but I feel certain they will be involved in all of these new opportunities as we go forward.
It's a great opportunity for us as faculty to bring, so for example, our extraordinary leader on this new building, Dave Moore, came to my classes, right? And I said, come to my classes, let's talk about this from a business perspective as well. And then he can get feedback from them as well. And then if I'd have a speaker in on something that could be helpful for green building, Dave would come to my class and be taking copious notes and make the connections, those kinds of things. And so it's a very integrated process that I think is really important. And Sustainable Carolina being incredible movement to be a part of and to connect with, and connecting students across the entire campus. And all students are absolutely welcome to come in, and we hire students for internships for ACEs from all around campus, not just business students too. So they get to be able to use our space as well. So
fantastic. And any last thoughts from anybody, panelists?
Yeah, I would just say it takes a village. So we need everybody's perspective, everybody's voice. And as Jeff and I both touched on, behavioral shift is important. When we leave our houses or apartments in the morning, we typically turn off the lights because we're paying the utility bills. We need to transmit that behavior to folks who work on university campuses to take ownership. So if we can reduce the cost of our energy consumption, we reduce our greenhouse gases, reduce our utility costs, and those funds can be reallocated to make these investments to buy that PV array over that parking lot.
I'll just say thank you to everybody. Thank you, Abigail, panelists. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
thank
Thank
you
you
all.
all.
Yeah.
Have a
This was
wonderful day.
great.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay
And there's a
warm.
CO